welcome to another episode of the Business Intercept. I am Kiara Ashanti, and I tell you, this is the channel for going over interesting business news and articles that I run across on the internet. Hopefully I can find something that's of interest to you and tell you a little bit about it. I found an interesting story that caught my eye today. The person that you see, I'm not sure how this is going to show up on camera, but you know, it could be this side or that side. Never know which one. But the person you see on the side of me, this nice dark chocolate young woman, is let me say her name correctly. I'm gonna have to look at the screen to say I make sure I'm saying the name right. Bozoma Saint John. Okay, she is a marketing executive, and today she moved from one company, a company called Endeavor, to Netflix for a salary jump of up to $7 million. $7 million. Sounds like a pretty good new job if you can get that type of work. So let's take a look at the story, because, you know, it's not only a success story for her, obviously, but in reading about her and some of the comments that she's made, not only about this position, but looking at her background as well, there are some interesting lessons that I think can be drawn from not only how she's gotten to be where she's at, but some cautionary tales for where she may be going in this position with Netflix. So let's take a look at it real quick and go over this. Let me just bring this up on the screen here. Okay. All right, so this story comes to us from The Wrap. Actually found it on MSN, but The Wrap is the one who actually, one of the places that reported this particular story, written by Trey Williams. Bozoma Saint John, marketing executive extraordinaire, scored big when she took the chief marketing officer gig at Netflix last week. So this happened, I'm getting this a little bit late if it happened last week, but whatever the case may be. The former Endeavor marketing leader was offered roughly $7 million to work for Netflix. According to an insider familiar with the deal, the package was dramatically more than what St. John was earning at Endeavor, according to the individual. Netflix and Endeavor have declined to comment for the article, and The Wrap was unable to reach St. John for comment as well. St. John's contract was up at the end of the year, and is just the latest in a slew of notable executives to exit Endeavor. So there may be a story follow-up to do on Endeavor if they've got a lot of notable, high, powerful, well-known executives that are leaving the company. That could mean some turmoil within that particular company. So that's definitely something that I'll investigate and bring an update to you about, because it sounds interesting. It's always interesting when you have people of high talent, or who within a particular industry people consider to be high talent, begin leaving. It's usually, you know, people are jumping off of a ship. It might be because the ship is sinking. You never know. So some of the people that they've lost are head of music Mark Geiger, as well as agent and partner Teresa Kang Lau, who left to launch her own management company with an overall deal at Apple TV. Ooh, yeah, things sound like they might not be doing that well at Endeavor. Definitely worth some looking into. Okay. Apparently, the entertainment company has been hit especially hard by the industry shutdown due to the coronavirus pandemic, which is true, but so is Netflix. I mean, Netflix is sitting on a pile of cash, but like anybody else that deals with entertainment and scripted shows, they got to continue to make content, particularly with all these new streaming companies that are pulling back content from Netflix because they want it on their own streaming platforms. Now, it says here, and this goes back to that pile of money that Netflix has. Netflix is infamous in Hollywood for its willingness to poach executives at all levels, creating price wars and tensions within the industry's business ranks. Look, I mean, there's two ways to look at this. You can look at it the way that the writer, Trey, says, which is that within the Hollywood structure in LA and all that, Netflix is known for taking people and paying exorbitant amounts of salary or bonus in order to get them to jump ship. Or you can look at it as Netflix has the money and the willingness to pay these people what they're worth. We're going to get into that whole concept in just a few minutes. But look, think about the NFL, which going forward is going to have some issues, obviously, for other reasons. But they just signed a deal, well, not the NFL, but the Kansas City Chiefs just signed a 10-year deal that's worth reportedly $550 million when that's all said and done for Patrick Mahomes. Some people say that's a little bit too much money if they hope to keep a team around him that will be able to make the Super Bowl. And you know what? There's evidence to point that out. However, as an owner of the franchise, if Patrick Mahomes stays healthy and stays as dynamic as he is, then whether or not they get to the Super Bowl again is irrelevant, because the Kansas City Chiefs are going to make a bucket load of money because people want to see him. People want to buy his jersey. There are going to be more NFL games televised in prime time and otherwise for the Chiefs now than if they had Alex Smith, for instance. So, again, they think he's worth that amount of money. Certainly his agent thinks he's worth that amount of money, and so they came to an accommodation. In this type of situation, I'm sure it's the same thing. Okay? So, before we get down to where the Bozoma has some comments about her salary, let's kind of take a look at her background. So I'm just go over to simply quickly her Wikipedia page, and the first thing, I'm moving this outside. The first thing I want to comment on is, now she is American, born in the U.S., but moved from the U.S. To Ghana when she was only 6 months old, and then the family returned back to the United States when she was 12. So she grew up in Africa for about 12 years. Dark-skinned sister, beautiful smile. The only reason this matters is she would be an abnormality in the entertainment business. You don't see a lot of African American women, period. Certainly don't see a lot of them that are dark-skinned. Got a degree from Wesley University, and her father, she got a degree in English. Her father has a PhD in ethnomusicology. I'm not even sure what that is. And so she has worked with PepsiCo, Beats Music, Apple, worldwide. She was recognized with Billboard magazine as one of the top women in music. And she was listed as Fast Company's 100 most, recognizable people who are influential in terms of rising up the ranks, according to this. And then she joined, she's worked for Uber and left Uber for Endeavor in 2018. Now, I'm going to move this screen over a little bit here. Let me realign this here. All right, just scoot this over a little bit so we can see all of it, because she says something about her her time at Uber, and there's a lesson in this. So before I even get to that, let's kind of look at this. She was in Fast Company's 100 Most Creative. She was in Fortune magazine's, 40 people to know. 30 people to know under the age of 40. So she's considered a wonderkin. She's considered really good at her job, and she's had really good results apparently at all the other positions that she's had. So she's a quality hire. She's smart. She's capable. The fact that she happens to be black is kind of irrelevant to a certain degree. All right. She's educated. She comes from a two-parent home who emphasize education. And I say all of that to kind of give you a background. She is in a position where there are very few people who look like her with those types of jobs, and certainly at the salary levels that she may have had at these other positions. But she's also really good at her job. So she's gotten enough attention and done enough quality things in her positions where this is not an affirmative action type situation. This is not companies trying to be woke, so to speak, and get some street cred by having a black woman at this level. She's obviously shown that she deserved to be that level. However, when she was at Uber, she says, let's take a look at this. When I got to Uber, I was honest in my desire to go and change essentially what I thought was a challenging environment, especially for women and for people of color. What I discovered was a lot of people who had a desire to do better, honestly, but couldn't get out of their own way. At some point, it became too overwhelming for me. It became a good lesson for all of us. You don't need to be the savior, and you can save yourself too. Now, I can't really tell whether she's talking about the other African Americans that worked at the company, or she's talking about the company's desire or the desire to do certain things with regard to diversity and just never got around to doing it in the way that she wanted. So she left. It's interesting because as somebody who's coming into the job, who's really good at her job, it seems to me the best thing that she can do to provoke diversity is not only in how she conducts herself at the company and how she performs, but obviously with anything that she has direct reports with regard to in terms of hiring or looking at other candidates. That's where she needs to be. She doesn't need to be in the HR office trying to get them to do things that are outside the realm of her expertise or her job description. And maybe it sounds like perhaps she found that out. Nonetheless, she goes to Netflix, gets a huge pay bump, and this is what she says about this. Let's go down to this. Oh yes, pay equity. Saint John has held top marketing roles at Uber, Apple Music, Pepsi-Cola North America before going to Endeavor, as we discussed. The highly sought-after marketing executive has been vocal in the past about knowing her worth, especially as a black woman, and demanding equal pay. The point about pay and equity is we have to demand our worth, St. John said on stage at Cannes Lions in 2018. When you look at black women, it's even worse. I began to switch that dynamic early on. I began to research the position, figure out the hierarchy, and then went in with my offer. And I always ask for whatever a white man is making in that same job. So the couple things I want to talk about here, okay? First of all, part of what she's alluding to is the myth about women making 70 cents of the dollar compared to what men make. That's a nice statistical generality that people like to glom on that has been debunked by so many people, it's ridiculous. It's when you look at women who have equal pay, women who have equal education, equal experience as a male counterpart, black or white, they make just about the same. In fact, statistically, they did a study and they found that when you accounted for time in a job, meaning experience, education level, and working the same hours, this has a lot more to do with doctors than executives. But when you make all those things be equal, the difference in pay is typically less than $5,000 a year. There's a difference, but it's not much. And the difference, most people who are being independent minded, meaning they're not on the left, they're not on the right, they're just looking at the facts, tends to be a difference as a result of people not asking for the right amount of money. So you pull it back, and this is funny because we're talking about this now, but I remember talking about this in many of my business communication courses in college. And here is it. Men, either by temperament or by socialization, don't have a problem asking for what they want. Don't have a problem, for the most part, almost demanding what it is that we want in the situation. Doesn't really matter whether we deserve it. Doesn't really matter whether we've earned it. If we want something, most of the time we're willing to ask for it. With women, there's always been a different dynamic. A very large percentage of women don't ask for what they think they're worth, don't ask for a raise higher than they think they can get. They kind of just go with what the company offers them. And despite what Saint John says here, a company's job is not to pay you really what you think you're worth. Okay? I mean, they might, but that's not their job. That's not their obligation. Their obligation really is to pay you what the market will bear for that position. And of course, if your position is the same as other people, which as you get at higher and higher levels of up the executive suite, becomes a little bit more difficult, right? I mean, there's a huge difference between what a COO does and a CIO does. There's a difference between what a marketing executive does and a marketing assistant does. So it's easier to compare a marketing assistant, if you have 10 of them, than what you should pay one marketing executive in a company. But be that as it may, when you have groups of people at that same level, they should make about the same amount of money, according to, again, performance, education, and experience. But having said that, there's a habit among women, not always, but generally, where they will not do that. They just accept what is offered to them. They don't do what, and I'm going to repeat it, Saint John does. I began to research the position, figure out the hierarchy, and went in with my offer and always asked for whatever a white man is making at that same job. Now, she's being somewhat bombastic because as a practical reality, she doesn't know what a white man makes at that job. When she does her research, she knows what that job makes. Okay? And so she goes in and she either asks for that amount of money or if she's smart, a little bit more than that. That's basically what she would do. Not a lot of women do that. Men do that. And so men usually get that extra bump. Women who do that do the same thing. I have a really close friend. She is an executive in a large company, knows her job really well, does her job really well, is respected by the company, is valued by the company, and she gets good pay. And part of the reason she gets good pay is not only because she's good at what she does, but because by her temperament and personality, she doesn't have a problem asking for what she wants. She's not a wallflower. So she goes in and she asks for what she wants in the same way that a man would. And she gets it. If someone goes in there timid, you don't. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with the white men or patriarchy. That has to do with an individual deciding to be good at their job so they can go in and legitimately say, I'm worth X amount of money. And knowing what the job pays. Because look, if you go in and ask for $65,000 and they say, okay, we'll give you 60, and you didn't know that the position that they're giving you pays 85, well, that's on you. That's not on the company. It's not their job to make their expenses higher. I mean, it's their job to bring in talent and pay them what, in a range, what that, job will, can get in the marketplace. It's your job to know what the job pays and what you want to try to get for that. Now, according to experts in the field, this could kind of go back up. One top marketing executive at a major studio said the $7 million figure for a CMO was extremely high for Hollywood. So basically, that's an incredibly high number, as it seems that Netflix is playing with monopoly money. And Netflix spent more than $15 billion on content last year. Look, Netflix has a lot of money. Okay, so let's take a look here. They got some figures from some of the other people. Saint John is replacing Jackie Lee, who left the company after less than a year for personal reasons. And before that, Kelly Bennett. So it seems like we've got, two women in a row. The company was making, now Kelly was making $9.2 million. That's pretty good. In salary and $5 million in severance plan. All right, so that's not the same thing. So we're not going to count that $5 million. So $3 million. So that's a pretty big jump from $3 million to $7 million. So why is Netflix willing to spend that much money for a position? Well, I don't know. Why are the Saints willing to pay $550 million over 10 years for a quarterback? Well, because he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And she's considered one of the best executives. Now, the question is going to be, how does she perform? And I bring this up not to disparage her, but I find it's interesting that what she said about going to Uber and trying to make some changes as it relates to diversity, inclusion, and other things at that company until she got to the point where she felt like she just couldn't do it and she needed to kind of give up, so to speak, on that. All of her positions previously have been for products. Even Uber, which is a service, is still more of a product than what Netflix is. Netflix is a true entertainment company. They're a production company. Their business is members, getting people to be members on a monthly basis and providing entertainment content for their members. That's completely different than selling, Beats or Apple Music or even a service like with Uber. Completely different. And so coming in and having possibly a social justice warrior type of mindset could be problematic, because think about this. If she comes in and she wants to go more of the what we're seeing so many companies do now with the social justice, when you start allowing that type of content and that type of marketing to bleed into your company, you got to remember, half of the viewers don't want to see any of that. Okay? And so she might find it challenging if that's her goal. The old saying, get woke, go broke. We're beginning to see whether or not that's actually going to be a true maxim as more and more companies do this. So I think this position is really going to be a good professional stretch for her, because if that's the direction that she wants to go, she's going to have to figure out a way to try and see how that's going to increase, the membership for Netflix. Now, granted, she's involved in the marketing. She's not involved in the production side, but I'm sure that she will have input into the direction that, Netflix uses to, in other words, they have a slate of projects to come in. They cannot advertise all of these projects equally. All right. Some are going to get more advertisement resources and marketing resources than others. So which projects get those? If the projects that are more social justice warrior leaning gets more of the attention, more of the focus, more of the emphasis, either because that's what St. John is pushing the company to do, and that's what Netflix has decided they want to go. Well, that could be a disaster, because there are certainly a lot of people like myself and others that don't have any interest in seeing those type of shows. And so we don't tune in. We don't watch the shows, and maybe we just cancel the our membership altogether. As opposed to content that everybody can enjoy and that focuses. So it seems to me, for instance, if you're a company, if I'm in that position, and I'm not, so, obviously she is, there's obviously a whole lot she knows that I don't, but it seems to me that the best way to get content that's social justice focused is not to market that, but to market the stuff that brings everybody in, and then highlight that in your new releases on your platform to get the people who are there who like those types of stories to stay for them. But if all I see from Netflix, or most of what I see from Netflix, is stories that are emphasizing these types of storylines and this type of attitude towards society, I don't have any interest in rejoining their membership and looking at that. I mean, I get preached at enough from ABC, CBS, and NBC, and I'm not going to pay $15 a month or more for that same annoyance. So there are going to be some challenges ahead. And how how St. John decides to, go after and tackle those challenges, I think it will be interesting to see. Because again, entertainment, where you're making content, mostly scripted content, is a completely different type of product to try and market and sell than physical services or physical products. So it's a completely different thing. And so there are going to be some challenges ahead for her. But hey, that's why they're paying her the big bucks, right? $7 million is not chump change, and it's a big, nice salary bump for her. And look, I wish her well, certainly not only as an American, but as an educated black woman. And I'll say this in this particular segment. Her success thus far in life is hallmarked by everything that makes people successful, particularly African Americans. Her father was in the house. Her mother was in the house. Her father emphasized education. Okay? In school, she did not get pregnant early. She did not get in. Now, granted, her parents are educated, so this is probably never really an option for her to begin with, but I bring it up anyway. She didn't get involved in, obviously, the criminal element in life, right? She didn't get, again, pregnant early. She didn't deal with a whole bunch of drugs. She got married and had a child after she got married. Unfortunately, and tragically, her husband passed away back in 2013. But she did everything that a person is supposed to do. If you get educated, if you don't get pregnant early, if you have two parents in your home, your chances of being poor in the country, in the United States, is small, real small. She's done everything correct. And she's been, more importantly, really good at her position. So it's no wonder to me that now she's being rewarded for it handsomely. And you know what? She should be, as should anybody else in her position. That's going to do it for this segment. If you want to hear more stories like this, please hit the notification bell. If you have any comments or feedback, put it down in the comments below. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you at the next segment in the next couple of days.